Hello, welcome to Gut Health 101 for IBD with me, Sherry Lip. I am happy to have you here today. And this is really going over some basics of gut health. And it's a start on a series of little education things I will be doing. And I'll be talking a little more about that at the end. But to start out with this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I am Sherry Lip. I am the founder of Happy Gut for Life and the author of Don't Skip Dessert, as well as a couple other tracking books for IBD that I'll be talking about a little later on. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 1999, and I had surgery that year. And then I started the SCD diet in 2000. So here's a little bit more about what I do. So there's Happy Gut for Life there. There's my certification. Don't Skip Dessert Volume 1, which came out quite a few years ago. And then my two tracking books. One of them is available on Amazon and it's for everybody, anybody who wants to track. It is geared towards IBD. And the other one is a part of a 6-week program I have. And then I am very excited to announce that Don't Skip Dessert Volume 2 is out November 7th, or if you're watching this in the future, it may be out already. But look for the pre order for the physical copy of that, or find that on Amazon. And I will be having some more stuff about that when it comes out, so be on the lookout for that. Um, so let's start out with food. That's why a lot of us are here because we are interested in, honing our diet for our health. So let's think about what food is. So this is actually the dictionary definition of it: a nutritious substance that people, plant, or animals eat or drink to maintain life and growth. So the key word in there is nutritious because that is a word that people don't always define the exact same way. So the definition of nutritious is containing substances your body needs and can use to stay healthy. Now, I bring this up because there is a current movement, part of the anti-diet movement, though not everybody in the movement thinks exactly the same way, just like anything else. But some people define any food as nutritious, basically, and that's not something I agree with. All food will provide you some calories, but not all of it is nutritious. But that's just something to be aware of. That there are people out there talking about how diet restrictions of any kind should not be done. That food does not play as big of a role in our overall health. That others think it does. So just be aware of that. There's a lot that's a totally separate topic that we'll probably go into at another time, but that's just something to be aware of as you're on your journey to your own health choices. So in my terms of nutritious food, the most nutritious foods are whole foods, not the store, but the foods themselves. Although maybe the store is important to you, and maybe you get a lot of food there. But so whole foods, we're talking about fruits, vegetables, beans, legumes, whole and unrefined grains. And if you're from SCD, those are not part of SCD, but in terms of whole foods, they are part of that world. And then meats in their normal state, unprocessed. And then you can also throw in some dairy in there. I didn't put it on this list because there is more going on with dairy. But processed, because really processed, I mean, minimally processed, we call it that, because actually just cooking or adding something to a recipe, like to bake, a cake or cookies or something, is processing it. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about ultra processing, where we were taking the food away from its natural state. Because we want to, we want to keep things whole for us. One way to look at it is that whole foods they don't last very long because they break down very easily, and that's why they're good for our diet, because they break down easily and quickly, and that's why you want to eat them. They're not preserved. They are meant to be eaten and digested. Now, of course, as humans, evolved, and probably very quickly in our history, we began to think of ways to preserve food. And of course, that's going to get us through long winters and food shortage. So it's not all bad, but over time, of course, we found more and more ways to preserve food, and some of it is not as good as others. So in the 1950s, we saw the rise of convenience food. So post World War II, we started having new technology. We started it was a good time for the country because the war had ended. And there was a lot of industry, and there was also a rise in women who worked outside the home. So there, less time cooking, and that's not a bad thing that women were working outside the home. But of course, as we increased the 60s, 70s, 80s, the rise of two working parent households, single parent households began to rise. And that's not a judgment on that. It's just a fact that convenience foods became more important. But in the 50s, it was kind of a status symbol that kind of upper class, and we don't really associate those, but you could have all these conveniences where that was lower class, still had, to be preparing everything and buying, the unrefined, unprocessed foods. In minute rice, I put up here as an example, even though we don't eat rice on SCD. It's a good example of how for the minute rice, they strip all the fiber out of it so it could cook quickly. So we're taking away a lot of the nutrition. TV dinners, those are meant to be frozen and then heated. And if you're old enough like me to remember when you had the tin tray there and you had to put it in the oven for like an hour, it wasn't that convenient. It was convenient that you didn't have to cook, but it wasn't quick. So for us, when I was growing up, that was a treat to have one of those. We probably every once in a while, it's like, let's go pick out a TV dinner. And it was kind of a special thing. It wasn't an everyday thing until microwaves came along. Then things got real quick and convenient, and it was easy just to have those. And then as far as like cereals, of course, they're refining the grains to make them more friendly to kids, especially. As you can see, they even put the name sugar right in the title. There were a lot of cereals up until probably the mid 80s or 90s that just had sugar as part of the title until that kind of became more of a negative. And then also in the 50s, the rise of fast food franchises, even though they'd been around for quite a few years before, it boomed in the 50s with McDonald's, which first franchised in 1953. And so those became, a huge part of our diet. Now, back then, they were probably healthier. Also, it wasn't something that people had all the time. It was more marketed as a special treat, take the family out. But as populations increase, as different, like I was talking about, different types of jobs where people are out of the house more, fast food became, something that just became more and more and more a part of people's diets. So that started in the 50s, and that's something to keep in mind as we're kind of taking a look at the history of chronic illness and food. So kind of going forward in 2018, which is when I kind of last saw the statistic, so now already 5 years ago, 51.8% of US adults are living with one chronic illness. That is over half of the population. And 27.2% are living with more than one chronic condition. So that's a quarter of the adult population, United States, that is living with chronic illness. And over time, of course, our life expectancy has improved, but with all this chronic illness, so much of the population living with it, has the quality of life gone down. So that's what we're kind of thinking about with gut health. Yeah, can improving our gut health improve our quality of life? I think so, because certainly when we're not, our gut makes us feel very bad, and it's not quite working right. And we want that. And we're going to see here coming up how it plays a part in chronic conditions. Because we're not going to put an end to this consumption of refined foods, of processed foods, of fast foods. We're not going to just say that's not going to happen. People like those foods, and people depend on those foods. So I do want to say, with that advent of more processed foods, shelf-stable foods, it did give people access to foods who were maybe in areas where they might not be getting as much food available to them, urban areas or lower, economically disadvantaged. So it's not all terrible that there's food became available to them, of course. But we need to learn to, what to do, to live, to eat healthy within our means. And what's the healthiest choices we can make within our means. So it's, education is what is necessary for good health so we can make the decisions that are going to work best for us within our abilities. So when we're talking about gut health, we're talking about more than just our stomach, which we all know, but physical structure, the living ecosystem, which is your microbiome, and then the brain-gut connection, which there is just more and more research going into the brain-gut connection. So the physical structure is there's a nice diagram there, and you'll have the slides, so you can look at that even closer because a lot of us don't think about the whole digestive tract, starting with our mouth all the way down to the exit. But especially a lot of people don't think about liver, gallbladder, pancreas as part of our digestive system, even though those do exhibit a lot of digestive symptoms if there's something wrong. So it's all together, and it's something we need to keep in mind is that it's all connected. So your microbiome is the relationship between the friendly and unfriendly bacteria. So there, a lot of times we say bad bacteria, but actually that bacteria has a very defined purpose within our digestive system. We just need to have less of it than our good bacteria. Think of it as like, at work. There might be one person in your workplace that is abrasive, kind of hard to get along with, and you don't want to talk to them maybe, but they do their job and they get results. So they're kind of a necessary part of the office, but you don't want the whole office filled with them, right? So think of it kind of that way. There is the bacteria you want more of, and then the bacteria that has its purpose, but you don't want it to overwhelm. So a good example of this is E. coli. E. coli lives naturally in our digestive tract, and unlike a lot of other bacteria, it can live in oxygen. So what its job is to consume the oxygen in your digestive tract to make room for the bacteria that can't live in oxygen. And we don't need very many E. coli to do that. So, what the E. coli that lives in your digestive tract, if it gets too much, and other things can happen too, but if it gets out of that digestive tract, it can cause us problems, particularly urinary tract infections. Most UTIs are caused by E. coli. The other kind of E. coli that you've probably heard about many times when there's outbreaks of it is a pathogen. It's not the kind that lives in your digestive tract that gets in there and causes illness or there's other kinds of bacteria that will get in, they're pathogenic and they cause food poisoning. So that's different. But there is an E. coli that lives in your gut that's naturally there, supposed to be there, it has a job to do. We don't want it to overwhelm our digestive system, and there are other bacteria like that. So when things are out of whack, we call it microbiome dysbiosis. And so the what we should is 80%, the friendly, and 20% of the unfriendly. That's the good balance. But my research has shown me that most Americans have the opposite of that. So we're living with a lot of bad bacteria in our digestive system, and it can lead to health conditions. And like I said, there's more and more research going into what that means and how that affects our overall health. And then our other component, the brain gut connection. So and this is something that's got a lot of studies going on. But our brains, our nervous system, our central nervous system, and enteric nervous system, which is the nervous system connected to our digestive tract, work together. And we know this because when we are nervous or scared, that affects our gut. We have that immediate feeling of it. And also we know that when our gut is out of whack, that can lead to things like depression, anxiety. Some people report brain fog. So we know these things are connected, and it's important to keep that in mind because our overall health is our overall health. We have one body, and it all works together. So it's important to think about how it all works, not just one part of it. So as we were talking about, with IBD, it continues to rise, and that's why I was emphasizing the 50s, because data shows that over the last 70 years, it has increased exponentially in the Western world. Because it was documented 250 years ago, and since it's autoimmune, it's probably been around longer than that even, but 250 years ago is documented, and we don't really know what causes were then. But we do know that, obviously population has increased, so that's a lot more. Maybe genetics play a role in that. But the other thing is just, like I said, the rise 70 years ago was 1953. So we know that the rise has coincided with the proliferation of processed foods and fast foods. And then by the 21st century, which we're now well into, believe it or not, IBD is now found in every continent, in every populated continent in the world, and especially in newly industrialized countries. So as that food moves into those countries, we're seeing a rise in IBD and other autoimmune illnesses. So there's a lot of research as to why and what the causes are for that. But when it comes to IBD, food is not the only trigger. So there's a lot of other things. So there's stress, there's environment. Maybe you don't have clean air, clean water where you live. There's genetics. That's going to play a role, not just in you getting it, but your body's response to it. Whether it's mild or severe, that genetics play a role in that as well. And then, of course, there's our diet, which more and more studies are showing the role that sugar has in IBD. And I'm glad, and I'm not glad that's happening, of course, but I'm glad to see that studies are making that correlation because obviously we all know, we've been told that food doesn't have a part of it. And also it's something, to kind of counter those ideas that, we don't need to make any dietary changes for our health, unless it's a diagnosed thing like celiac or a food allergy. But with the anti-diet movement, we need to have that research to kind of combat those other ideas coming in and say, okay, those things don't have anything to do with body image. Anti-diet movement is good in the fact that it's addressing the idea that, body image, also losing weight does not always help a health condition. That's not the goal. The goal is to get ourselves healthy, and that might affect our weight or it might not. So I get that part of it, but to say that food doesn't have any different nutritional impact is definitely, studies are not showing that. The other factor in IBD is unknown. We don't always know. There's not, some people have none of those other triggers, that would give a red flag, but they still have IBD. Now, maybe they're more sensitive to one of those things. Maybe that's a mild thing, it would seem like, but it's affecting them. So that's the unknown component that we should always keep in mind. We can't always say, well, ate this and it caused a flare. It may or may not be. There could be other factors going on. Probably are more than one factor if you actually go into a full flare up, not just, upset stomach is not a flare up. So that's also one thing to keep in mind as we're choosing foods. Maybe having something disagree with you does not mean you can't eat it. It just might mean that maybe you had too much, or maybe you haven't had it in such a long time that it's affecting you because your body isn't used to digesting it. So think about different factors as we're thinking about our overall health. But what we do know about IBD is that, regardless of the cause, there is damage. And so we want to get ourselves feeling good. We need to create the environment that will make us feel good. Even if we don't have the results right away, making your environment healthy is going to help, either quickly or even in the long term. you need to have that healthy environment. So don't feel like if you don't get immediate results that you're not helping yourselves, because it could take a while to get that rebalance, and having a balanced gut is good no matter what. And even if it takes a little while to feel the results of it. We like to think of our gut microbiome as an ecosystem in itself. And I used to use the ocean because there's a lot of different things in the ocean. You can't even see all of them in this picture, but you can see that there are lots of different kinds of fish and all this stuff in the bottom here. And of course, there's stuff in the water, and it's all working together to form a healthy ecosystem. And we know when we introduce unhealthy things to the ecosystem, like tons of microplastics, that it's not good. But think of it also this way: with all these creatures living together, and there's a shark there, and there's one shark there. But what happens if it's all sharks? That kind of represents the unfriendly bacteria. We want one shark is okay, but if you're, we can't have all sharks, because what would they eat? They would consume everything, and then everything else would die because it's missing all the components. So, and that's imbalance, but that also is a a dysbiosis is also a lack of variety. And that's one thing I get very concerned about when I'm talking with people, because we tend to restrict because we're trying to make ourselves feel good, but we are losing the variety of bacteria in our gut. And we need a good variety. And we want to, my goal as a coach is always to increase the amount of foods we can eat, even within, whatever your dietary parameters are. There are choices to be made. And my goal is to get people to eat more of a variety of foods. So when we're talking about different conditions, gut permeability, you've probably heard of leaky gut. I've talked about it before. Leaky gut is another word for gut permeability. So gut permeability is that particles of food are leaving your digestive system and entering your bloodstream, which is kind of an alarming thing to think about. There obviously things leave your food, nutrients leave your food and enter your bloodstream, but these are like bigger particles. Some particles that aren't supposed to get out in different places are getting out into your bloodstream, and that can cause, or that's associated with different health conditions. So the current debate right now about leaky gut is not whether it exists or not, even though the term is maybe not something that medical professionals want to use, but gut permeability exists. But what we don't know right now is it a cause or an effect of these illnesses that it's associated with, which of course is IBD and other autoimmune, pancreatitis, liver disease, even psychiatric, neuro disorders and metabolic disorders. So we know leaky gut is associated with these things, but there's debate over whether it's cause or effect. But regardless, we know that the inflammation in our body that is associated with this gut permeability, it's linked or not. It's linked to the inflammation. It's linked to cognitive decline, which is extremely concerning and something that is becoming more and more prominent in medical research. Even so much so that some medical researchers actually are starting to refer to Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes, because they're starting to associate Alzheimer's and that severe cognitive decline to our digestive system. So that's something that's not official right now. It's not recognized. Type 3 diabetes is not recognized by the American Diabetes Association. It's not recognized by the AMA. But it's something to really think about. And if you're curious, definitely look into it, because the research is very interesting, and I'm going to be curious to see where it goes and what it leads to. But we don't want. Cognitive decline, is a very scary. None of us want that as we age. So in addition to gut health, that's why it's our overall health and that brain gut connection, because our gut health could be affecting our cognitive health. And that's something, and then when we have inflammation in our body because of IBD, it's something that we really have to think about. And that's why we want to get it under control. So the stress factor in our life, in addition to food, really affects our overall health as well. And some people who live under very stressful situations really have a difficult time getting their gut health under control. So it's something to think about it. Like if you are, getting help, if you're in a situation where you're just under a constant state of stress, or if you can make changes to your situation in that case. But our body, we know when we have that immediate impact of stress, like let's say you get mugged or something, your body is in fight or flight mode. So what we want is to be relaxed. I actually, I sent over an article about, should we eat while we're stressed because we're in that fight or flight mode. So our digestive system is getting, our brain is not thinking about it. So it kind of, it just sits there. So we've had that feeling of food just sitting there. And sometimes that's caused by maybe some illness, but it could also be caused by severe stress. And also maybe it's just sitting there, maybe it's moving through very quickly. And we want a nice relaxed state where our body can digest the way it's supposed to. Because we want to build that microbiome, managing our diet the way, making the choices that's right for us, managing our stress. We can't manage every single aspect of our life, but the things we can, we want to try. Because we want that diversity, we want balance, we want the good digestive function, we just want to feel good. That's kind of why we're here, right? That was our catalyst for looking into this. We want to feel good and we want to live our life. So with a holistic approach, we look at the whole big picture, like I've been talking about: our mind, body, soul, spirit. You can use different words there, maybe that fit your life, but the idea is that your mind is good, your body's good, your overall being is good and in balance. So we want to look at everything. So we're looking at our diet, but we're looking at what's going on. Did we get fired? Do we have a fight with a coworker? Do we have a fight with our spouse? Is our house getting foreclosed? I mean, there's so many things that can affect our lives, and those are big ones. But there are small stresses too. You're in a disagreement with your sister or your mom or your friend, or just all these things that can build up. Are you overwhelmed at work? You have, there's been a lot of job eliminations. Are you doing the work of two people? Are you, maybe not, you're struggling in some way? That's, we look at that, and how we feel overall. Is there something else going on causing us problem? Maybe you have back pain or other health, or you have another chronic condition. How is that affecting your digestive health and then your overall mindset? It can be easy to get into kind of a bad place, which I talked about at the SCD Rocks conference. Letting that bad place kind of overwhelm. So that's why we like to look at the whole big picture and not think of ourselves as like, oh, you're just need to have more willpower, you just need to be a stronger person. That's not the answer. When we're having stress and anxiety and depression, we need to look at that and what are the causes of those things and what can we do about it, and do we need to get help for that? And so as we are tracking, we are looking for those kinds of patterns that tell us, maybe there's something we didn't actually see or didn't make the correlation because we're just dealing with it day to day, but maybe it's actually, a pattern that's affecting our health. When we're eating, so going back to the diet portion of it, this is a good way, I had to look at, we eat, as let's say SCD is your diet and we're eating that, and we're like, okay, all these things fit, but what if your day is, a whole bunch of dates, bananas, mangoes, and then a little bit of protein, a little bit of a starchier vegetable, and then an almond flour muffin and nuts. That might be a little too much fructose. So it fits the parameters, but it might not be what's right for you. Another thing that fits the parameters that might not be quite right for you, I mean, needs to be expanded on. This is one that I see a lot, so I put it as an example. So this is kind of maybe the beginning of, if you're doing a CD or GAPS or just a dietary protocol, is that you're eating, a lot of protein and a little bit of cooked vegetables and maybe a banana. And you're not, and maybe, and in this case, it might be an okay start because you are getting some calories and some food, but it's not enough variety. Like I said, like we want to have a good variety in our gut bacteria. And this is a good start, but it's not a sustainable one for long term. But I do see a lot of people kind of getting afraid to move out of this. And you don't want to eat 6 eggs every single day. And so, some people do, and that's fine. But I don't recommend just having the same thing in large quantities every single day. Variety is kind of a key to our health, and we want to get there. Because yeah, so we want to have like a different variety. This is a one plate, but you want to have different plates, kind of like this, where you have a variety of food, and also you want to enjoy your food. So that's my goal, is to get a good variety of enjoyable food on our plate. So how do we get to that? We listen to our body, and that's a good goal of intuitive eating. Not just eat whatever you want, but to give your body what it needs. So one thing I learned about intuitive eating that I think that some people in the intuitive eating anti-diet field miss is that our body could be telling us it wants like sugar and starches because the bacteria in our gut that is on the unbalanced side, and that bacteria is wanting those things. So it's not, your body doesn't always tell you the right thing to eat, and maybe when you get more balance, it's going to tell you better. So listen to your body to a point, but give it what it needs first. So you're gonna, but then you'll kind of, obviously if something makes you feel bad, then you're gonna cut back or eliminate it for a while. So we start listening to those things so that we can start making the right choices. So we're not going to over restrict. We're not going to restrict calories. Even if we're not totally happy with our weight, we want to we want to give the right amount of calories to our body, because calories help us heal. And so you want to find the right amount that you need. And so that's another part of listening to our body's hunger signals. So we don't want to force ourselves to eat too much. Somebody's like, "Oh, finish this up," but you're full. You can be full, and if you're still hungry, then maybe try to eat a little more. I know that's harder when you have symptoms, but we want to get our hunger cues, in line with our brain, so it can really help us, get the right amount of food and get the right foods. So we start building meals around the foods that we know work, and then we expand from there. So think of it as a circle. You got your foods you can eat, and then like maybe what's a food similar, and you start building out and you start building that variety in there by building your meals. So that's our productive tracking. That foods that work for us and what we're eating and how we feel, what else is going on in our life. Um, that's productive tracking, is putting it all together. And that leads me to what is next. So next is starting October 2nd is a 90-day protocol. And if you are listening to this much later on, just ping me for some more information on a different, another 90-day or whatever I am doing next. But right now, in September of 2023, we are starting a 90-day tracking challenge for, uh, getting, just we're gonna have some fun with it, and there'll be some education. I'll be posting some shorter videos than this one about different topics, and we're gonna have some fun. And this is totally free. I do have my book, but it's not required that you buy it to be in there, although it is geared towards it. But I just want to have a fun challenge that we can kind of get together and track our food and get a little feedback and guidance either from me or from each other on it. So, there is the sign up for it. You can scan that code or click that link on your PDF that you should have. And I hope to see you on the 90-day challenge. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.